Thanks for watching Slice of Sci-Fi. I'm Noah Richmond,
And I'm Lewis Howley.
talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Part 3. So I don't think much introduction is needed. By the time you've gotten to Part 3, you either have seen Guardians of the Galaxy or you haven't. And so you sort of know whether this is something that's going to be up your alley. Um, I guess speaking for myself, I'm somebody who was very much a fan of the first one. Um, really liked it so much I actually went and watched it twice in the theater, which is pretty rare that I do. Um, I liked it enough that I went and searched out the comic book that the original film had sort of used as its source material. Of course, Guardians as a comic has had a long, varied um, career, but in terms of the comic where characters like where Star Lord is a main character and Rocket and Groot are characters in it. I'm trying to remember what era that was. I think that was maybe early 2000s. The those stories were coming out. Anyway, I did go back and found the stories that those were based on, and I I enjoyed them, but having read them made it turned out to be a mistake in terms of Guardians of the Galaxy Part 2. Because once I watched Part 2, I just couldn't stop seeing how completely they were deviating from what the story was supposed to be. And so I think I don't like Part 2, but it's also a little hard to judge it completely objectively because I am comparing it against source material now, in addition to just on its face thinking it wasn't that great, perhaps. Um, so part three, though, is not referencing anything that I'm too familiar with. So I'm going in a little more fresh slate with part three. The only real source that I do have some familiarity with was Adam Warlock from the Jim Starlin's original Thanos Infinity Gauntlet storyline. Um, and certainly that Adam Warlock is quite different than the Adam Warlock on screen in this. But fortunately, that didn't really affect my enjoyment of the film too much this time. So that's kind of going to be my lead in terms of my own experience coming into it. What about yourself, Lewis?
Well, I agree that I did not think Guardians of the Galaxy 2 was as well made as the first one, which I thought was incredibly tight as a script and really almost had no wasted scenes. And then in 2, there was a lot of oh, screen hogging, I thought, by Kurt Russell, a little bit of overacting, in fact. And there were some scenes that just dragged on and on. And, but I will say that coming into 3 with neutral expectations, I thoroughly enjoyed watching 3. Even though I have a standard complaint about Marvel movies being 2.5 hours long, and which at my age is a long time to sit through a movie without getting up. And I did check on IMDb, and the running time for Guardians 3 is exactly 2 hours and 30 minutes. And and again, it also reminds me of the days when we used to have intermission and films were really long. And I'm thinking, well, you're passing up concession sales. But aside from that, it was really I enjoyed Rocket's origin story in particular. I thought that was well conceived, well executed, I enjoyed the side characters that introduced, uh, who later appear toward the end of the film again. And I also thought that the premise of finding a solution to uh, eliminating the kill switch that is active in Rocket uh, provided a good impetus to keep that film going along to the places it went to, because that was kind of the thread that held everything together, even as things deviated a little bit on the edges. And did you have any thoughts on that, Noah?
On the deviation, or what specifically?
Oh, I just thought, in terms of the Rocket origin story, was that something you appreciated?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, and really that is the heart of this particular film, is introducing you to, really giving you the backstory of Rocket, and filling in that story and that character. Yeah, I mean, I thought that was quite well done. I also just thought in general that this film really brought back a lot of the fun of the first one in a way. I don't know. Somehow the second one, my memory of it is I just found it a little more stilted. Like the sometimes the humor almost felt like it was being forced in, and it was closer to being Marvel formulaic. This really, to me, felt like we were back to James Gunn being James Gunn and doing his thing and having fun with it, and just telling a really outlandish story, um, and just having some fun going overboard with uh, space and being out there, and how
Well,
how kind
I
of
have
out
to
there
admit,
and outrageous can we be?
I have to say, I enjoyed the use of humor and the leavening of humor throughout. And I commented to Noah at the showing that in many ways the film is like a screwball comedy in places. That the antics are so amusing, and there are some wonderful side characters. Cosmo the dog is one. Nathan Fillion has a great side character. I thought Will Poulter's portrayal of Adam Warlock was often hilarious, and maybe unintentionally so. And his pet was just adorable. I was a little surprised, though, in terms of the origin story, because there are moments where the experimentation on Rocket is, although we don't see it per se, it's the implied gruesomeness. I thought for really what's intended to be a family friendly film, really, was a bit intense. But then there
Yeah,
is that theme throughout the movie of um, the equality of all species, regardless of their intelligence level and in terms of their worth. And so that might be part of the general, don't do lab tests on animals theme. That the film generally is trying to push throughout.
yeah, well, and that is an interesting point. Just in terms of how the times have changed, I would say that a film like this could not have been released in its current form and avoided an R rating had it come out in 1987, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, yeah, the violence is definitely um, edgy for something that is marketed to families. But
Yeah,
on the flip side, I suppose the flip side of it, as you said, there's a lot of levity, there's a lot of humor. Um, it it does at times border and I think he does a good job of not quite going over the line, but he does sort of tiptoe right up to the line of almost getting preachy. Of I definitely did come away from this film with the sense that James Gunn is somebody who believes in a creator and an afterlife. um, yeah, he's definitely has some messaging at points in the film that I think are making it abundantly clear that's where he's coming from, but not to the point where com- it's like right where it almost could take away from just the fun of a film just being an entertaining film. But he doesn't quite go over the line. He still manages to keep it where anybody can come into it, regardless of their background and their beliefs, and still just enjoy the ride.
I wanted to comment too on the moments. There were some moments that were very moving. I don't think you could watch it and be unaffected by it emotionally in terms of the power of the message that was coming across in terms of the feelings of the characters. I again noticed that there were points where the audience was absolutely silent, just dead silent. And I think that that's always an interesting observation in a movie, where it's so compelling that no one will speak and or rustle around or do whatever they do. And and I agree with you about the preachiness. I hadn't really thought much about it, but and I also want to say, in terms of messaging, that I would not be surprised if James Gunn was a vegan or a vegetarian, although there are scenes of people eating what appears to be some kind of animal leg, I remember, in the movie. And, but there are some good themes in the movie. Again, you get the theme of family and what it means to be part of a family. You get the theme of not being afraid to go in a direction that might be hard for you to go and facing up to that. And I think that was a worthwhile message too. I mean, Noah and I were in a row with multiple children, which to me does not strike me as the target audience for this movie. Yet clearly it is, because people did not think twice about bringing their kids to see it. And I also commented that I think that this kind of movie is truly review proof. I mean, the review is mostly, I think, to give some personal insight into the movie as opposed to helping it to sink or swim. I mean, it's going to be an enormous success no matter what anyone says. I looked today on IMDb and it had an 8.3 rating already, and which is pretty high. And so, oh, go ahead, Noah. I see you have some things.
Well,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
I mean, when films first come out, that's pretty normal for those ratings to be kind of boosted. you know, they do tend to fall, although not always. So yeah, you're right. It'll be interesting to see. Um, I did think that it's pretty clear that I think Marvel made the right call by listening to the fan petitions and deciding to bring James Gunn back and letting him do his thing. I do think that uh, again, it really does bring back a lot of that fun and spirit of the original film. I do think it's definitely a solid step up from part two. Um, the one thing that you did allude to that is hard to overlook is the running time is unnecessary. Whereas the first film, and again, Lewis, I'm sort of repeating the point you made. One of the beauties of the first film is there wasn't a wasted scene. Everything really fit. Everything that was in there was something that was really right to have it in there. This one definitely had some fat that should have been trimmed. uh,
Yeah, and while I'm at this point, I'm going to talk about some of my criticisms of the film. And some of the fat that could have been trimmed were, especially toward the end, there were excessively long face shots of characters. So to try to milk the emotion out of the scene. Um, and, really, how many of those do you need? I also felt like the film did not know how to end. I mean, I kept thinking, is this it? Is this it? Is this it? And there was always something else.
yeah,
And I mean, the climax had occurred. It's time to wrap it up, and wait for the credits scenes. And I didn't care for some of the scenes. I thought there were too many scenes of bickering among the characters. I didn't mind the bickering when it was humorous, that I enjoyed, but often it was not, and that I thought could have been cut. Um, because I didn't think it led anywhere. It was just like filler. And I think those are my main criticisms. I did think, well, the visual effects were very, very good. Sometimes some of the battle scenes were protracted or confusing, where you couldn't tell what was going on. But those are really the only obvious criticisms I have.
yeah. 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 So, I mean, I think overall, it sounds like we're largely on the same page that this one is a success. It really does capitalize on the fun of the original. It does bring back James Gunn's sense of play, sense of humor, and it does it in a way where it just feels like it's its own thing. Unlike a lot of the other Marvel films where they've clearly got it down to a formula, and the humor is there because somebody in marketing has said, okay, now we have to insert some humor here. Here, it really does feel like it fits. Like this is just part of who James Gunn is. This is his vision. He's having fun with it, and it really is just a delightful story of just going overboard with how going into space and how much can we stretch our imaginations and come up with some crazy things. The main thing is if you have young children, do be aware that this is um, the, be prepared for what the levels of violence are and determine if that's that fits for your family. And then for everybody else, the other thing to be aware of is that it is a 2.5 hour movie, and it probably doesn't really need to be. Um, Overall, though, I would definitely say I would give it a thumbs up. That this was a lot of fun and worth seeing.
Yes, I agree. The only other movie by James Gunn that I can say I've seen, besides the first Guardians, is the remake of Suicide Squad, which I actually enjoyed very much too. I thought it was so much better than the first attempt at Suicide Squad. And um, I would say too, in terms of warning people and who have children in the family, that there are some physical appearance scenes that might be difficult for a kid to see. And I won't specify what those are, but they are gruesome. And but overall, I probably would give this film 4 out of 5 stars.
Yeah, yeah, I think that sounds right. I think I'd go along with that. Okay, well, I think that is our thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy Part 3. And thank you all for watching Slice of Sci Fi.